Good afternoon, fourth grade. Today we're going to finish up our story about Aset. Our quick write asks us, based on the decisions Aset made yesterday, what kind of person is she? Explain your answer. Well, if we go back in our reading for yesterday, we know that Aset, go back in our text from yesterday, we learned that Aset followed the birds to Kovna Place, and that's when she realized that Usir was dead, and so she sits down on a rock and cries, and then she meets these handmaidens, and they become friends, and they get her a job with the queen, and Aset's job with the queen is to take care of the queen's son, and Aset really enjoys taking care of the baby boy. But then she realizes that she loves him so much, she doesn't want him to die and leave her like Usir did. And so she decides to turn him into a god. And so as she's casting the spell on him, she puts him in the fire because part of the spell requires purification by fire. And this queen rushes in because the baby's in the fire, and she snatches him out of the fire. But in the process, she ruined everything, because the spell wasn't complete. She pulled him out of the fire before the spell was complete, and then the baby, Aset screamed really loudly, and in the story it says that scream killed the baby. And so now Aset is really devastated. And so when we're thinking about the decisions that she makes, she is loving and compassionate towards the handmaidens and the baby boy, but she's also selfish because she wanted to make him a god, and she didn't ask anyone, and it ended up killing the baby. So silently write that down for your quick write. Press pause to write down your answer, and play when you're ready for the focus question. Today we're still thinking about what motivates Aset to act the way that she does. Why does she make the decisions that she makes? And what does this tell us about Aset as a person? Before we get started, we want to think about 3 vocabulary words. The first vocabulary word is pity. That's when you feel sorry for someone, you have pity on them. And that is this second picture. This person is feeling pity on the person who's crying. The second word is vacant. That just means empty. So this movie theater is vacant because no one's sitting in the chairs. It's empty. And then the last one is mayhem. That is just chaos or violent disorder. And these people are experiencing mayhem. It's just this angry mob. All right, as we read pages 9 through 11, we're going to use our CSPS strategy to learn more about Aset. So we're going to start at Aset put the coffin in a boat. Okay. Aset put the coffin in a boat and brought it back to Egypt. She would bury her husband as soon as they arrived. Yet once they were on Egyptian soil, the desire seized her to open the coffin for one last embrace. Alas, piteous sight! Aset wept on the wasted body of Usir. She closed the coffin and hid it in the swamp while she prepared herself for the rituals of burial. During these months, Set had learned to transform himself into a fabulous beast, the terror of the desert, with the belly and back of a wolf, a long snout that could pick up any odor, square ears that could detect any sound, and a bent tail that would warn others off. Fearsome and vicious, he hunted in that form by night, and that very night Set, when he was out hunting, came across the coffin. He opened it and ripped Useir's body into 14 pieces. He threw the scrappy lumps of his brother as far as he could, across the face of Egypt. This way Aset could never give him a proper burial. Useir could never be whole in the ever after. Set had made mayhem of Aset and Useir's lives. So when we're thinking about character, we want to know who is Aset and what's she like. And we know Aset is a goddess who lost her husband, and she's on her way back to Egypt to bury him. Aset is a goddess who lost her husband, and she's on her way back to Egypt to bury him. Press pause to write that down for character. And you need a quote, and so you can use the first 2 sentences on page 9. These first 2 sentences right here, you can write as your quote. Press pause to write down your quote and play when you're ready for the setting. And we know that Aset is in Egypt. It says, once they were on Egyptian soil. Okay, so Aset is in Egypt. And for the quote, you can write, yet once they were on Egyptian soil. Press pause to write down your answer and play when you're ready for number 3. And we know this challenge that she faces is that Set found Useir's body, and he ripped it into 14 pieces and scattered it everywhere. So now Useir cannot be whole in the afterlife. So Useir cannot experience the afterlife because Set ripped up his body into 14 pieces and scattered them across Egypt. That's our problem. Press pause to write down your answer and play when you're ready for the quote. And you can put these 2 sentences in the last paragraph as your quote for your problem. Press pause to write down your answer and play when you're ready for the solution. We're going to go to the next page when we're thinking about the solution. How does Aset solve this problem of Useir being scattered into 14 pieces? Top of page 10. In victory, he howled so loud the earth shook. That's Set. He's saying, yay, like I really did destroy Useir. Yet still the story is not at its end, for good must prevail, or we will all be strangers of hope. Aset wept. She sobbed. Set's sister wife Nebekhut felt splintered. No one could watch the misery of Aset and not be touched. But it was Nebekhut's husband who had caused this misery. It was Set, that wild god Set. Didn't a wife owe loyalty to her husband, even if he was wild? Nebekhut chewed her knuckles. Her eyes grew glassy. Aset's tears fell in the Nile River until it overflowed and flooded the lands, and still she cried. Nebekhut shook her head. There were all kinds of loyalty. Aset was her sister, and Useir was her brother, after all. And there was also a touchy and secret matter concerning Nebekhut's son Impu, something that involved Useir and that had made Nebekhut feel she owed Aset. So she went to Aset and helped her gather the parts of Useir. They watched for circling birds of prey, a clue every time, and ran from one grisly sight to another until they had collected 13 pieces. But the 14th, where was it? Lost, hissed a passing serpent. Lost in the marsh, monster. In grief, Aset rolled in the mud. So that's the first part of our solution, is that Nebekhut and Aset ran all over Egypt collecting the pieces of Useir, but they only had 13. Press pause to write down the solution and play when you're ready to keep reading. And Ibis waded past, making his giant grrr, the throaty noise of breeding, and Aset knew it was the god Tahuti, the tongue of the god Ra, come to give advice. So she let out a low, guttural wail, mimicking Tahuti's, and the pieces of Usir assembled themselves, and Aset fashioned the missing part out of wax and clay, so Usir was whole, and she kissed him into consciousness. And so that is the solution. The second part of the solution, Aset mimicked Tahuti's growl, and all the pieces of Usir assembled themselves, and she made the 14th piece, and then kissed Usir, and he was made whole. And you can underline this sentence for your evidence. Silently write that down for the solution. Okay, and then Aset and Usir spend one last night together, and then he dies. And we'll pick up in the small group on this page. You have time to answer this question. How does Aset respond to challenge, and what does that reveal about her as a person? The challenge is the problem. So you need to explain the problem and explain how she solves it in your paragraph.